In today's video, we're going to continue our NHL Season Preview series. We have a special guest joining us, and today we're discussing the Boston Bruins, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today's video is going to be the NHL Season Preview for the Boston Bruins. Now we do have a special guest joining us today. It's BNG Hockey. You've seen him here on the channel before when we covered the Bruins prospects not too long ago. So his link will be down below in the description, and I do highly recommend you go check out his channel. He does lots of great Bruins content, and you're going to want to check that out, especially if you're a Bruins fan. So if you've been following along with this series, you know that we break up these season previews into 4 segments. The first segment, we recap the 17-18 season, take a deep dive into all their stats, and analyze how they did last year. We then do a segment called Additions and Subtractions, where we look at all the new players joining the team for the upcoming year, as well as players that are no longer with the club. In the third segment, we do a projected lineup and go through all the defense, forwards, and goalies that you're expected to have in a regular starting lineup. And in the fourth segment, I'm going to give you my projections on where I think the team is going to finish and what they're going to accomplish in the coming season. Since we have a special guest joining us here today, I'm going to kick things off with the first segment covering the 17-18 season. Then I'm going to throw it over to Dylan at BNG Hockey to cover off your additions, subtractions, as well as your projected lineup for the coming year. So let's jump in and get started with all the 17-18 recap. As we know, the Boston Bruins had a fantastic 17-18 season, certainly taking a few teams and fans by surprise. I must say I've been very impressed with Coach Bruce Cassidy and all the improvements he's been able to make to that Bruins roster since taking over from former coach Claude Julien. Obviously, he's changed a lot with their systems and style of play, and it's really worked out quite well. They finished last year with a record of 50 wins, 20 losses, and 12 overtime losses for 112 points, finishing in second place in the Atlantic Division. They came very close to winning the Atlantic Division last year and just fell short of beating out Tampa Bay Lightning here for first place. They were among the league leaders last year in goals for, popping 270 goals into their opponent's net for 6th best in the NHL. That was certainly a very impressive result. They also maintained very low goals against for 214 goals against here for 3rd best in the NHL. So defensively, they were very sound. They got excellent goaltending out of Tuukka Rask and Anton Khudobin as well. Gives them a goal differential of plus 56 on the season. So obviously that is a tremendous strength for the Bruins. They were a very offensive team while being very defensively sound. So that was a great combination. If you can be top 10 in both goals for, goals against, you're going to have a very strong season. Now let's jump over here and take a quick look at how they did on special teams. Their power play clicked at a rate of 23.5% for 4th best in the NHL. So again, special teams were working quite well for this team. On the penalty kill, they were no slouch either. Their PK was the 3rd best in the NHL with a percentage of 83.7. So their special teams were a very big part of last season's success for sure. They had a tremendous power play, killed off the penalties when need be, and overall, like I said, this had a really solid year. Obviously, the Boston Bruins had a tremendous regular season, made the playoffs. They beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in round 1, but did fall short to the Tampa Bay Lightning in round 2. In my opinion, one of the big factors in that series was goaltending. They didn't quite get the goaltending out of Tuukka Rask that they really needed to really go deeper into the playoffs here and have a stronger chance of being a Stanley Cup contender. Now let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of their other team stats that I'd like to take a look at here. Like for example, when they scored the first goal. When scoring the first goal of the game, the Bruins had a record of 29-2-6. So obviously that is a tremendous record. Scoring first certainly was a very important feature to the Bruins last year. They did it often, and when it happened, they rarely gave up that lead later into the game. They were involved in 1-goal games, had a record of 12-5. So there's only 15 times throughout the year that they either won or lost by a single goal, and more often than not here, over 3/4 of the time, they came out on top. So that also shows that they can be very defensively sound and tighten up when the games are close and late into the game to hold on to win. Now, next I want to take a look at their record when leading after the first period as well as leading after the second. In my opinion, these two stats for the Bruins were incredibly impressive. Leading after 1 period of play, they had a record of 24-1-3. While leading after 2 periods of play, they had a record of 33-0-4. So obviously, if you combine those two records, there's only one time that they either had to lead after the first or second period all season long that they blew the lead and ended up with a regulation loss. Obviously, they still had some overtime losses in there as well, but they at least got 1 point out of that. But the fact that they only had 1 regulation loss after leading after 1 or 2 periods all season long was an incredible testament to just how strong this team is. Now let's jump over here and take a look at the breakdown of scoring by period for the Bruins. Now this is, again, is very impressive, and you're going to notice as the game goes on and gets deeper and later into the game, they outscored their opponents by a wider and wider gap as each period went forward here. In the first period, they were outscoring their opponents by scores of 79 to 76 for a +3 rating. If you take a look at this second period breakdown, they outscored their opponents 87 to 69 for a +18 rating. Over to the third period, which in my opinion is the most impressive, they outscored their opponents 95 to 57. That's absolutely crazy. So if you went into the third period against the Bruins and you were either had a small lead or you were tied, you were in trouble because the Bruins scored a lot of goals in the third period. It gives them a +38 rating for third periods last year. So again, as I reiterated here, as you can see, as each period went forward here, they scored more and more goals and widened the gap against their opponents, oftentimes wrapping things up in the third period by a wide margin. Now I'm going to hand things over here to Dylan at BNG Hockey. He's going to go over the additions, subtractions, as well as the projected lineup for the 18-19 season.
Hey there, Bruins fans. It's Dylan from BNG Hockey, where it's always black and gold. Want to say a huge thank you to Mike for having me here again on his channel to do this Bruins season preview. Now let's get it started with some additions and subtractions. We'll be starting it off with the players who will be finding employment elsewhere for the upcoming season. The biggest loss, in my opinion, Riley Nash. Last season, he played 76 games for the Boston Bruins, scoring 15 goals, 26 assists for a total of 41 points. Mainly our third-line center, but anytime Patrice Bergeron was out, he would slide right up to the top line between Pasternak and Marchand, and actually held his own. He got some pretty good numbers this year. Scoring 15 goals is really good. He was in between Heinen and Backes when he played on the third line, and that was a pretty dangerous line for a couple months or so. So Riley Nash is definitely going to be a big loss for this Boston Bruins team coming into the 2018-19 season. Nash will be playing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He signed a 3-year deal making $2.75 per. Tommy Cross, the captain of the Providence Bruins last season, signed a 1-year deal with the same team. The next big loss for this Boston team is backup goaltender Anton Khudobin. He will be going to the Dallas Stars on a 2-year deal, making $2.5 million per season. Now, I say this is a big loss because he stepped it up a lot last season. When Tuukka Rask was having a bit of a rough patch and the Bruins needed to grab some wins, Anton Khudobin was our guy. He only started 29 games, but he got 16 wins, 6 losses, and 7 overtime losses. Not bad stats for a backup goaltender, and a huge reason why the Bruins had as many points as they did last year. We'll also be saying goodbye to a young gun who's been hanging around for quite some time in the Bruins system. Austin Czarnik will be going to the Calgary Flames on a 2-year deal, making $1.25 per. In 59 games with the Boston Bruins, Austin Czarnik scored 5 goals, 12 assists for a total of 17 points. If we take a trip to Providence, those numbers are much better. Last season, playing 64 games in Providence, he scored 25 goals, 44 assists for a grand total of 69 points. I think this might have finally been the year that Austin Czarnik could get a full-time job with Boston. With that third-line center spot opening, he would be battling with all the other kids to get an opportunity at that. So I'm sad to see him go to Calgary. Some of the minor losses, Nick Holden going to the Vegas Golden Knights on a 2-year deal, Tim Schaller going to the Canucks on a 2-year deal, and Kenny Agostino joining the dark side and going to the Habs. Now let's talk about some of the new faces that are going to be putting on the black and gold sweater. Arguably the biggest addition and my personal favorite this offseason for the Boston Bruins is defenseman John Moore. Last season with the New Jersey Devils, he played 81 games, scoring 7 goals, 11 assists for a total of 18 points. John Moore is that left-shot defenseman that Don Sweeney has been looking for. He's maybe not the biggest name out there, but he's definitely an under-the-radar name. I think he has some offensive upside. He's only age 27. He was used on a third D pair and still put up pretty solid numbers with the Devils. I think he could get some second power play time for Boston. I think maybe he could play with Charlie McAvoy. He could play with Carlo. I mean, he has the opportunity to be an impact player, and I think Boston has a much better offensive team than the Devils, so I think John Moore can have a great year. We signed him to a 5-year deal, and as I said before, he's only 27, so I'm not too worried about the term, and he's only making $2.75 per season, which is what Adam McQuaid makes right now, so it's a great deal for a player I think can really grow here in Boston. Another pretty big deal is signing Jaroslav Halak, the starting goaltender for the New York Islanders last season, to a 2-year deal making $2.75 per. I like this deal. As we said before, we see that Anton Khudobin is going to the Dallas Stars, so we need a backup goaltender, and the Bruins really don't have any goaltending prospects that are ready to step up into a backup role. So you get Jaroslav Halak. As I said before, he was a starting goaltender for the Islanders last season. He played 54 games, getting 20 wins, 26 losses, 6 overtime losses. His goals against average was a 3.19, and his save percentage was a .908. Are those numbers good for a starting goalie? No. Are they good for a backup goalie? No. But he's going to have a much better team in front of him this season. And with that much better team is a much better defense. He's not going to have to play 54 games because we have Tuukka Rask, so we don't need him to play 54 games. If he can slide in and help Rask when he needs it, during back-to-backs or that weird time where Tuukka Rask decides to be a terrible goalie, Halak can step right in. I think he's a much bigger name than Khudobin was, and we all loved Khudobin last season. I think he can be just as good here in Boston, and I think that he can be even better than Khudobin was last season. I'm also really excited about some kids who are going to play some full seasons this year, starting off with Ryan Donato. In just 12 games last season, he had 5 goals, 4 assists for a total of 9 points. He can show that he's not afraid to shoot the puck. And this year, he's going to have a much bigger role and play a full 82. That's going to be dangerous. Another player, Anders Bjork. He played 30 games last season, which is more than Donato, but he had 4 goals, 8 assists for a total of 12 points. He played on that top line with Bergeron and Marchand and looked pretty good. I think he's going to have a much better year. I think he's had a lot of time to heal from that injury, so I'm excited to see him play a full 82 as well. Some of the minor signings are forward Joakim Nordstrom and Chris Wagner. Some of the player tryouts are defenseman Mark Fane and forwards Lee Stepniak and Daniel Winnick. Now let's get into my predictions for the team that's going to be going into battle this season for the Black and Gold. For your first line, we have Patrice Bergeron centering Brad Marchand and Anders Bjork. As I said before, they've played together, so I think Bjork could slot right up there on the top right wing, build some more chemistry with those two players, and have a nice full season. Your second line consists of my man David Krejci centering Jake DeBrusk and David Pastrnak. Pastrnak is an elite young right wing, and I think he can really help spread the depth of the scoring this season, which I think Bruce Cassidy will want to do after the Tampa Bay series. Jake DeBrusk is a really good young player as well. I think he could create some chemistry with Pastrnak, and that will be really good. And we already know that there's chemistry between Pastrnak and Krejci being fellow countrymen, so I think that's a really nice second line for a good 1-2 punch. For your third line, I'm going nothing but speed and skill. I have Jacob Forsbeck at Carlson, JFK for short, centering Donato and Heinen. This is a great kids line that can bring a lot of speed and grow together as the future of this Boston team. For your fourth line, we have a good old-fashioned Bruins checking line. You have Sean Corrali centering David Backes and newcomer Chris Wagner. Wagner was one of the leaders in hits last season. We know how much Backes loves to finish a check. Sean Corrali can bring a lot of extra speed, and he can bring some physicality as well. Your number one scratch forward will be Joakim Nordstrom. Some honorable mentions are Noel Acciari, Jack Studnicka, Trent Frederick, and Peter Solari. On the back end, we have the man who will just never age, Zdeno Chara, playing on the top D pair with young gun stud Charlie McAvoy. For your second pair, you have Brendan Carlo with Torrey Krug. Your third pair is John Moore with Kevin Miller. The thing I like about all of these D pairs is it's one defensive guy with one offensive guy. I think that will work out really well under Bruce Cassidy's system. That way, one guy can pinch and one guy can be back. Your scratch defensemen are Matt Grzelcyk and Adam McQuaid. Some honorable mentions are Zaboral and Vakanainen. In the cage, we have Tuukka Rask and Jaroslav Halak. Might just be one of the best goaltending duos in the entire league.
Great job to Dylan over at BNG Hockey. Thanks very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts there. Again, if you're not familiar with this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, his link is down below in the description. You definitely want to go check him out for great Bruins content. Now, lastly, here I want to give you my predictions and projections for the Bruins for the upcoming 18-19 season. If you watch my prediction video series that we put out a couple weeks ago, you'll see I had the Bruins finishing in 3rd place. That was my thoughts at that point in time. And at this point in time, I still think that's likely going to be true. I do think, though, however, there's a lot of parity in the top part of the Atlantic Division. And between Tampa, Toronto, and Boston, there really is not a great deal of difference. And I do see their point totals being very, very close and coming down right down to the wire here the last few games of the year. And obviously that season series as they play each other is going to be critical to determine the positioning here as we finish out the 18-19 year. Could the Boston Bruins finish higher than I projected them here? Would not surprise me in the least, to be honest. I could see them finishing up even in 1st place or in 2nd in this division. They're a well-coached team. They score a ton of goals. They're defensively sound and responsible. They have terrific special teams. Obviously, the penalty kill and power play are huge. That oftentimes got them a lot of W's last year, and it would not surprise me at all if they actually do overcome and finish up higher in the standings. Tuukka Rask is an incredibly solid goaltender. He's had a tremendous career for the Bruins, put up some great numbers, and really given them some great performances. But he has yet to come up big enough in the playoffs when it matters most to project him further and deeper into the playoffs. If they can get that this year, then I do think that there's a pretty good chance that the Boston Bruins will certainly be one of the teams contending for the Stanley Cup at year's end. So we'd love to hear your comments down below. What do you expect the Boston Bruins to accomplish in the upcoming 18-19 season? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.